Hey, what's up? Today's video, we're going to be going over the top 5 worst Science 7 stars. So, I know in the title of the video, it might say worst champions, worst Science champions, but for all of these videos of all the classes, I'm only going to be considering 7 stars in the list because there are a lot of 6 stars and lower ranks that just have absolute stinker champions that just have no reason, like there's no point to have them in the game, and that would just fill up the list for each respective class with just champions that just have no reason to be in the game. And I don't want it to be a boring list. I want to go through actual 7-star champions that you can earn and that are like at the highest rarity that you can earn. Because, for example, there's 2 Captain Americas. They both suck. You're never going to use them. Then we have an Abomination that's bad. We have a Yellow Jacket. So for these lists, I'm only going to be considered 7 stars. I just feel like that's a little bit more fair because these are the highest rated champions in the game. So, of course, you want them all to be good. So we're going to be going over the top 5 worst for each class. If you like this idea, please let me know in the comments. Let me know if you want to see all the classes. With that being said, once again, thank you guys so much for the love and support you guys have showed on the recent videos. I really didn't get much hate for my top 5s, which were pretty good. But I will say, the top 5 worst, I feel like I'm going to get a lot of hate for. I really do feel like the worst category will bring it out in some people. So, just a warning, if you don't like my list, I'm sorry. These are what I've kind of narrowed it down to. So yeah, that's a little disclaimer at the beginning. But yeah, let's hop right into it. So for the worst category, I'm not going to do honorable mentions. I don't think you need to do honorable mentions for the worst characters. I think there's just 5 champions you need to get into. So that being said, the first champion I'm going to talk about, which I believe is the 5th worst 7-star, is actually... Where is he? He's right here, Mr. Negative. So, on paper, Mr. Negative isn't really a bad 7-star. He is probably middle of the road, maybe even... He's about middle of the road. I don't believe he is a bad 7-star. But the issue is his kit relies on his evade to do damage, or to do damage reliably, to build up those Furies and those charges and those degens. And there's a mastery in the game called Unfazed. Basically what Unfazed is, if the champion evades or you evade them, they will go like unstoppable or something. I don't know off the top of my head quite like what it is, so we'll have to find it here. Yes, Unfazed. When an enemy evades, your champion has a 17% chance to attack, 150 critical damage rating for their next hit, and becomes unstoppable for 1 second. So basically, they have a 17% chance or whatever for when the evade triggers to become unstoppable. And it does not work well with Mr. Negative's kit. That being said, I still don't believe he is really that bad of a champion, but there's so much content nowadays, like BGs, AW, that just take up most of the game where you're fighting other players' decks and their masteries, where he's just not very useful. And any other content besides that where he would be where he could be played at his max potential, other champions do what he does way, way better. I feel like he is meant to be a shorter form health pool content, and the only short form health pool content in the game are your BGs, your AW fights, and you can't really bring him into that. That being said, all they would have to do to buff this guy is just give him something in a SIG ability or just his normal ability, kind of like how Okoye has to counter Mystic Dispersion, just to counter the Unfazed Mastery, or to just counter Unstoppable, give him a halt or something. That's all he needs, and he would be a perfectly fine champion. But it's just the fact that his kit is pretty poorly designed compared to the Masteries. There's not a lot of champions that just get shut off by Masteries. There's only really champions in the game that benefit from Masteries. So Mr. Negative, I believe, is one of the worst Science in the game. But like I said, on paper, he's not that bad. But just the fact that his whole kit gets shut off by Unfazed just sucks. So if he ever was to become... He's a Cinnable 7-star, so if anybody ever was to have him, people would just start running Unfazed and whatnot. So, that being said, the next on the list is Ant-Man. So, Ant-Man got a bit of a buff. I don't believe his buff is that great. The only thing I believe he has is he's just kind of a tank on defense with his availability to glancing. But that being said, if you bring in any of the top skill attackers, most of them either shrug debuffs or have ability accuracy reduction, so he's not going to be able to apply that that buff to you to glance. He does have decent immunities, but like I said, this buff that he applies or debuff that he applies by throwing a special, just it isn't really that great. On attack, he's not very good. I'm just trying to think of how to describe him on attack. I can't really. His kit is so weird. He's like supposed to be a power sting champion, but his power stings are kind of hard to apply. His damage isn't really that great. He really just seems like he was meant to be a defender. And even on defense, if you have champions that can shrug off debuffs, he is perfectly fine. And even then, all you got to do is wait out the debuff, and then you can just do your damage. So he's a little bit of a stall defender, but at that, he's just there's no room for him in the game. There is multiple power sting champions in the game that are 20 times better than him for the power sting damage, and it's just his base damage isn't that great. If he kind of had an availability to Furies like Spider Woman, maybe he would be better to maybe ramp him up throughout the fight. But he doesn't have. He needs what Spider Woman has. Every 5 hits he gains a Fury, and he just doesn't have that. So yeah, I believe Ant-Man is one of the worst science champions in the game. Kind of sucks though because I love Ant-Man as a character in Marvel. I really do like him, but he just isn't that great. So next up on the list is Spider-Gwen. Now Spider-Gwen, she's kind of like Ant-Man in a way. She really only has defense. She actually has decent. She has a decent utility on attack with the effect of she has an invert. Oh, I forgot what it's called. I don't know where it is. Basically, oh, there it is. Hold on, sorry, I can't remember what it's called. I don't know why. Innervate? Yeah, Innervate. Okay, that's what it's called. I couldn't remember the actual name of it. But basically, that just, when you apply that debuff to the opponent, they just can't gain any power, which is pretty nice utility. But that's about all her utility is, and she evades very much. Her evade potency is a lot. That is every Spider-Man character in the game has evade potency. She also has access to a slow, which is pretty nice, and it applies on heavies, but she just doesn't have that much damage. I mean, her damage is pretty solid, but there's a bunch of champions, like I've said with other champions on this list in the game that do what she does, just better and easier. Like, you are never going to use this champion over someone like Red Guardian, who has access to a slow and does 10 times more damage. And if you want an evade, there's characters like Spider-Woman who has an evade. There's other Spider-Man characters with evade. The only reason she is annoying on defense is just because you see her a lot in Story Quest, and there's ways that she like can't not be evaded that are really annoying. But besides that, she just has evade that's really hard to time because all Spider-Man's characters do. That's about all she has. She has a slow, she has an innervate, but besides that, she don't really have anything. I do believe she is really cool looking. I do like the design. I do like her special animations. They are pretty nice. But like I've said, you're never going to use Spider-Woman unless it's your first 7-star. And once you get another one, you're probably not going to use Spider-Woman ever again. Yeah. That being said, we are getting into our number 2 spot, which is Red Hulk. So, Red Hulk, he arguably could be better than Spider-Gwen, but they're just so neck and neck and so close in my eyes that it doesn't really matter. They're all bad champions. But the thing with Red Hulk is he was added to the Titan. He took up a Titan spot. So that's what lowers him more on my list than Spider-Gwen, because Spider-Gwen was in the basic pool. So if you pulled her, it was like, oh, it's just a basic 7-star. But he took up a Titan spot. That is terrible. I personally don't remember ever using Red Hulk. He has decent regen, not even decent. He just has some regen on his special too. He can convert some poisons into like kind of like fire effects that ramp up his damage. It's just, he has such a weird kit that you just don't ever need to use something like that. Like, there's never a point in the contest where Red Hulk would be needed. And that's the case for a lot of these champions. But if you kind of fill that spot where there's never a point in the contest to use him over anybody, he's just not a good champ. Of course, it sucks because I love Red Hulk. I always loved Red Hulk just because red was my favorite color growing up, and Hulk was one of my favorite Marvel characters. But yeah, The only reason I find that he's good in the game is because he's a Labyrinth boss that you can go in and test out some of your bigger damage dealing champs. But yeah, Red Hulk doesn't really have a place in the game at all. It sucks. He does look cool. He looks really cool. He was just made way back in the day to where this is all that was in the kit. Most champions nowadays, the Sig ability and the passives would cover this much ground. So he's just an OG champ, and the fact that he was released in a Titan just sucks. You grind for Titan shards and you'd pull a Red Hulk. That's why I have him at Sig 60. I have pulled him 4 times from a Titan. Felt bad every single time. So yeah, Red Hulk, number 2 on the list. Now we get to number 1. So, like I said at the beginning, there's not honorable mentions. I don't care about honorable mentions. Of course, there are champions on here that are also bad, but I only have 5 slots. So, there might be some champions you might think are better than others, and yes, they probably are, but there is a reason why I put most of these champions on this list. It's not because I believe they are actually the bottom 5 champs, but I believe they have been handled bad, or they just don't have a place in the game, or something's wrong with them. I kind of wanted to talk about it. That's kind of what I want to do with this list. And number 1 is actually Invisible Woman. So, Invisible Woman is a very, very weird character. She doesn't have a place in the game. I mean, she literally, I've seen some cool things on attack with her, but you have to play so weird and so perfect for it to happen. Also, on defense, she's just a nothing. She actually gives you willpower pretty easy, and if you can counter miss or just kind of play around miss, she's a nothing defender. On attack, she doesn't really have that much damage, and the only reason I would ever see bringing her into a quest is maybe some synergies, but even at that, her synergies aren't that crazy. I would just bring Mr. Fantastic over her in any quest ever, because Mr. Fantastic has some good synergies and he has a pre-fight. So yeah, that being said, I believe Invisible Woman is the worst character in the game. It's just, she has such a weird kit. She was the first person to bring in Force Field, which is pretty nice because Force Field nowadays is a great mechanic that a lot of champions have, but she doesn't need it. I mean, she needs it, but like it doesn't work well with her kit. But I will give her props. She brought in the idea of Force Field, and Force Field has been a great ability for the game. But yeah, that's been the top 5 worst science characters. Please let me know in the comments if you agree with me or if you disagree, and let me know some of the champs you think that are worse. There are also some other stinkers on this roster, set of science champs, but those are kind of the 5 I picked out. Also, one more disclaimer, I forgot to say this at the beginning. Actually, never mind. I was going to talk about trophy champions, but we'll talk about that in a later video. But that being said, thank you all so much for the love and support. And yeah, let me know if you want to see more worst champions out there. If not, I have other top 5s I'd love to do. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.